In the heart of ancient Macedonia, a young boy was born who would change the world forever. His name was Alexander, and he was born to King Philip II and Queen Olympias. From the moment Alexander was born, people knew he was special. His family was very powerful, and his father, King Philip, was a strong ruler who had made Macedonia a great kingdom. Alexander's mother, Queen Olympias, was also very strong-willed and believed that her son was destined for greatness. She often told him that he was meant to be a great leader. Alexander grew up in a royal palace surrounded by luxury and wealth. But it was not just the life of luxury that shaped him. It was the lessons he learned and the people who taught him that made him who he was. From a young age, Alexander showed signs of being different from other children. He was very curious and loved to ask questions about the world around him. His mind was sharp, and he loved to learn new things. One of the most important people in Alexander's early life was his teacher, Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. When Alexander was just a boy, his father, King Philip, decided that Alexander should be taught by Aristotle. Aristotle was a very wise man who could teach Alexander many things. He taught Alexander about philosophy, science, and politics. Aristotle also taught Alexander about ethics, which is the study of right and wrong, and how to be a good person. Aristotle's lessons made Alexander think deeply about the world, and it was during these years that Alexander began to dream of doing great things. While Aristotle taught Alexander many important lessons, Alexander's mother, Queen Olympias, also played a big role in shaping his personality. She was a strong and determined woman, and she often told Alexander that he was the son of a god. She wanted him to believe in his own power and to understand that he was meant to do something extraordinary. Queen Olympias would often remind Alexander that his father, King Philip, had big plans for the future of Macedonia, and that Alexander was the one who would carry those plans forward. Alexander's relationship with his father, King Philip, was complicated. While Philip was proud of his son's talents and achievements, he was also worried about Alexander's growing ambition. Alexander wanted to do more than just rule over Macedonia. He wanted to rule over the world. This ambition sometimes made his father feel threatened, and their relationship became more and more difficult. Alexander was also troubled by the fact that his father married a new woman, which meant that Alexander might not inherit the throne. He felt that his place as the future king of Macedonia was in danger. One of the most important events in Alexander's early life was when he was given his first chance to lead a military campaign. At the young age of just 16, Alexander was made the commander of the Macedonian army while his father was away. Alexander was given the task of putting down a rebellion in the north of the kingdom. He led his army with great skill and won the battle. This was Alexander's first taste of military success, and it made him more confident in his abilities as a leader. But it was not just military skills that made Alexander special. He was also very interested in learning about the world beyond Macedonia. Even though he was born into royalty and had everything he could want, he was curious about other lands and cultures. He loved hearing stories from travelers and soldiers about faraway places, and he dreamed of one day visiting these places. Alexander's love for adventure grew as he learned more about the world outside his kingdom. Despite his early success, Alexander's relationship with his father remained tense. King Philip, although proud of his son's abilities, was concerned about Alexander's ambition and his desire for more power. The tension between father and son grew when King Philip married a new wife, who was young and could bear him more sons. Alexander saw this as a threat to his future as the king of Macedonia. He became angry and upset, and during a wedding feast, he had an argument with one of his father's supporters. This argument led to Alexander leaving the palace for a time, and during this period of separation, Alexander began to think deeply about his future. During his time away from the palace, Alexander spent time reflecting on the kind of king he wanted to be. He dreamed of doing more than just ruling Macedonia. He wanted to unite the Greek city-states and lead them to fight against the powerful Persian Empire. He began to see himself not just as the future king of Macedonia, but as someone who could change the world. His time away from his father's court helped him form his own vision of what he wanted to achieve in life. It wasn't long before Alexander returned to the palace, and when he did, he was more determined than ever. King Philip, recognizing that Alexander was no longer just a boy but a young man with a strong vision for the future, welcomed him back. Despite their differences, King Philip understood that Alexander was the future of Macedonia, and he began to prepare him to take on the responsibilities of ruling the kingdom. Sadly, tragedy struck when King Philip was assassinated. Suddenly, at the age of just 20, Alexander was thrust into the role of king. He was now responsible for leading the kingdom of Macedonia, and he knew that he had big shoes to fill. But Alexander was not afraid. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life. His education, his experiences, and his dreams had all led him to this point. He was ready to take on the challenges of ruling a powerful kingdom and, in time, conquering the world. In the years that followed, Alexander would prove that he was more than just the son of King Philip. He would go on to become one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known, leading his army on a journey that would change history forever. But it all started with the early lessons he learned as a young boy and the strong belief that he was destined for greatness. At the age of 20, Alexander became the king of Macedonia. This happened suddenly, after the assassination of his father, King Philip II. King Philip had been a powerful ruler who had made Macedonia strong and successful. He had won many battles and expanded the kingdom's lands. But now, Alexander was the new king. He inherited the throne and the responsibilities of ruling the kingdom. This was a big challenge for someone so young, but Alexander was ready for it. His first challenge as king came quickly. After the death of King Philip, some people in the kingdom thought they could now take power for themselves. They did not want Alexander to be the king, so Alexander had to act fast. He needed to prove that he was a strong leader and that no one could take his place. He decided to take control of the situation immediately. Alexander led his army across the country and quickly put down the rebellions in the north. The people who had thought they could challenge him were defeated. Alexander showed them that he would not let anyone take away his power. This was important because it proved to the people of Macedonia that Alexander was not just the son of King Philip, but a strong king in his own right. After this, the kingdom of Macedonia was under his control, and the people saw him as their leader. But Alexander's work was not done. He was not just the king of Macedonia. He also had big plans for Greece. His father, King Philip, had worked hard to unite the different Greek city-states. This was a difficult task because the Greek city-states often fought each other. But King Philip had made great progress, and now it was up to Alexander to finish what his father had started. To do this, Alexander had to convince the Greek city-states to support him. Some cities accepted his leadership quickly, but others were not so sure. Alexander used both words and force to make sure the cities followed him. He promised them protection and peace, but he also made it clear that anyone who opposed him would face the full strength of his army. Slowly but surely, the Greek city-states agreed to join him. They knew that Alexander was a strong leader and that it was best to work with him. One of the most important parts of Alexander's plan was to unite Greece against the powerful Persian Empire. For many years, the Persians had been a threat to Greece, and they had even invaded Greece in the past. Now, Alexander wanted to lead the Greek city-states in a fight against Persia. He knew that this would not be easy, but he also knew that it was the only way to secure Greece's future and to prove that he was a strong and capable leader. As Alexander worked to unite Greece, he began preparing for the great battle that he knew would come with Persia. His father, King Philip, had already started making plans to invade Persia before he died. Now, it was up to Alexander to finish what his father had started. He needed to make sure that his army was ready for battle and that his allies in Greece were on his side. In the meantime, Alexander also faced challenges in his personal life. His relationship with his mother, Queen Olympias, remained complicated. She had strong beliefs about her son's destiny, and she sometimes disagreed with the way Alexander made decisions. But despite their disagreements, Olympias continued to support Alexander. She believed in his greatness and encouraged him to follow his dreams. Alexander's mother was one of the people who made him believe that he could achieve great things, and her support was very important to him. As Alexander prepared to lead his army into battle against Persia, he began to think about what kind of leader he wanted to be. He knew that he could not just be a king who fought wars. He wanted to be a king who could bring peace and unity to his people. He wanted to be remembered as a leader who changed the world. But he also knew that in order to do this, he would have to fight and win many battles. One of the most important parts of Alexander's early leadership was the way he connected with his army. He was not like other kings who stayed behind in their palaces while their soldiers fought. Alexander led from the front. He fought alongside his men, and they saw him as a brave and fearless leader. This helped him gain the respect and loyalty of his army. They believed in him, and they were willing to follow him wherever he went. As Alexander looked to the future, he felt ready to take on the challenges of leading Greece and fighting Persia. He knew that he was young, but he also knew that he had the intelligence, the strength, and the vision to succeed. His dreams were big, and he was determined to make them come true. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed into Asia, leading his army into Persia. He was now no longer just the king of Macedonia. He was the leader of an army that would face the mighty Persian Empire. This was the beginning of his great journey. But before he could face the Persians, he needed to prove that he was a leader worthy of his army's respect and trust. The early years of Alexander's reign were filled with challenges, but he overcame them all. His ability to win the support of his people, unite the Greek city-states, and prepare for war against Persia proved that he was not just the son of a great king, but a great leader in his own right. As he moved forward, Alexander knew that there were many battles to come, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. He had already shown that he was strong, smart, and capable of leading his people to victory. As Alexander led his army towards Persia, he was not just thinking about the future of Macedonia or Greece. He was thinking about the future of the entire world. He believed that he could unite different cultures, bring people together, and create a powerful empire that would last for generations. This dream was about more than just power. It was about creating a world where people could live together in peace and prosperity. The journey ahead was long and difficult, but Alexander was ready. He was more than just a young king. He was a visionary leader with a mission. His destiny was to change the world, and he would stop at nothing to make that happen. This was just the beginning of a journey that would make Alexander the most famous conqueror in history. His rise to power was only the start of a legendary story that would inspire generations to come. As Alexander began his campaign to conquer Persia, he was no longer just a young king. He was a man on a mission. His ambition had no limits, and he was determined to carve out a legacy that would be remembered for centuries. In 334 BCE, with his army in tow, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia, setting his sights on the mighty Persian Empire, the largest empire the world had ever known at the time. Alexander's first major challenge came at the river Granicus, where he encountered a Persian army much larger than his own. The Persians believed their size would guarantee victory, but Alexander had something they didn't: brilliant strategy and unwavering confidence. With his well-trained troops and precise tactics, Alexander crossed the river and launched a fierce attack that caught the Persians off guard. The battle was hard fought, but Alexander's army emerged victorious. This was a crucial moment, showing both Alexander and the world that he was a force to be reckoned with. With his first victory under his belt, Alexander did not slow down. He continued his march deeper into Persian territory, capturing city after city. Many of the cities he encountered welcomed him with open arms, seeing him as a liberator from the harsh rule of the Persian Empire. Alexander promised peace and freedom to those who joined him, and the message resonated with many. Soon, more cities opened their gates to him, surrendering without a fight. His reputation was growing, and the Persian Empire, once thought invincible, was beginning to show signs of weakness. However, Alexander's greatest challenge lay ahead. In 331 BCE, he faced King Darius III of Persia in the legendary Battle of Gaugamela. Darius had brought together a vast army, complete with war chariots and cavalry, believing the size and power of his forces would overwhelm Alexander. But Alexander was not intimidated. He knew his army was more disciplined, and his strategic mind was far sharper than Darius's. Before the battle, Alexander studied the terrain carefully. He positioned his army in a way that would exploit the Persian weaknesses. As the battle began, Darius's chariots charged forward, but Alexander had planned for this. His troops opened their lines, allowing the chariots to pass harmlessly through, and then swiftly counterattacked. With a well-executed cavalry strike to the flanks and his infantry holding the center, Alexander's forces overwhelmed the Persians. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his troops leaderless and in chaos. The victory at Gaugamela was a turning point in Alexander's campaign. It not only crushed the Persian army, but it also signaled the end of Persian dominance. Alexander entered Persepolis, the heart of the Persian Empire, and took control. He ordered the city to be burned, sending a clear message that the Persian Empire had fallen. However, Alexander knew that the battle for Persia wasn't truly over. The empire was vast, and pockets of resistance still remained. Determined to secure his victory, Alexander continued his relentless march through Persia, capturing territory and defeating any remaining Persian forces. As his army marched through deserts and mountains, they faced extreme hardships, but Alexander's leadership kept their morale high. His soldiers saw him as a fearless leader who shared in their struggles and fought alongside them. They believed in him, and that belief drove them forward through every challenge they faced. One of the most difficult aspects of Alexander's conquest was how to govern the vast Persian lands. Persia was a culturally rich empire with its own customs and traditions. Alexander knew that simply ruling with military might would not be enough. He needed to respect and integrate the local cultures into his growing empire. So he adopted some Persian customs, including their dress and language, and even married Persian noblewomen to solidify alliances. His efforts to blend Greek and Persian cultures were met with resistance from some of his Macedonian soldiers, but Alexander remained firm, believing that unity across cultures was key to building a lasting empire. As he continued to conquer new lands, Alexander's vision grew even bolder. He began to dream of an empire stretching all the way to India, a world where different cultures could coexist under one rule. This dream pushed him further east, where even more challenges awaited him. But the conquest of Persia marked the beginning of a much larger journey, one that would forever change the course of history. Alexander was not just building an empire, he was shaping a new world order. Alexander's journey to conquer Persia was the beginning of his dream to unite the Greek world and build an empire that stretched far beyond his homeland of Macedonia. When he crossed into Asia in 334 BCE, Alexander was not just leading an army, he was leading a mission that would change the course of history. The Persian Empire, the largest and most powerful empire of the time, stood in his way. But Alexander was determined to defeat the Persians and make his name known across the world. His first major battle came at the river Granicus. The Persian army was waiting for him, confident that their large numbers would defeat the young Macedonian king. But Alexander's army was well trained, and Alexander was a brilliant strategist. He led his troops across the river, surprising the Persians and catching them off guard. The battle was fierce, but Alexander's army pushed forward, breaking through the Persian lines and forcing them to retreat. This victory was important because it showed that Alexander was not only capable of leading his army, but also that he could defeat the mighty Persian forces. After the Battle of Granicus, Alexander continued his march deeper into Persian territory. He captured city after city, and many of the people he encountered welcomed him as a liberator. The Persian Empire had been ruling over many of these lands for years, and many people were tired of their rule. Alexander promised to bring peace and freedom to these lands, and his message resonated with the people. As he marched, more and more cities opened their gates to him, allowing him to conquer them without a fight. This was a sign that Alexander's reputation was growing, and that the Persian Empire was not as strong as it once seemed. But Alexander's most famous battle against the Persians was yet to come. In 331 BCE, he faced King Darius III of Persia in the Battle of Gaugamela. The battle took place in a flat, open plain, which Darius believed would give his army an advantage. He had a much larger army, including war chariots and cavalry, and he thought that his size and power would defeat Alexander's smaller force. But Alexander was not intimidated. He knew that his army was more disciplined, and he had a brilliant plan to outmaneuver the Persians. Before the battle, Alexander carefully studied the battlefield. He positioned his troops in a way that would give them the best chance to succeed. As the battle began, Darius sent his chariots charging toward Alexander's army. But Alexander had planned for this. He ordered his troops to create gaps in their lines, allowing the chariots to pass through harmlessly. Once the chariots were out of the way, Alexander's troops quickly turned the tide of the battle. His cavalry attacked the Persian flanks, while his infantry held the line in the center. Darius's army began to break apart, and soon they were retreating in chaos. Darius himself fled the battlefield, leaving his army leaderless and defeated. The Battle of Gaugamela was a turning point in Alexander's conquest of Persia. It showed the world that Alexander was not just a skilled military leader. He was a genius strategist who could defeat larger, more powerful armies. After the battle, Alexander entered the Persian capital, Persepolis. This was the heart of the Persian Empire, and its fall marked the end of Persian power. Alexander ordered the city to be burned down, sending a clear message that the Persian Empire was no longer a threat. He had defeated Persia, and now he was in control of their lands. But even though Alexander had won the battle and taken the capital, the war was not over. The Persian Empire had many territories, and there were still parts of the empire that were loyal to Darius. Alexander continued his campaign to secure the rest of the empire. He moved quickly from city to city, defeating any remaining Persian forces and claiming more land for his empire. His army marched through the deserts and mountains, facing difficult conditions, but Alexander's leadership kept them moving forward. His men respected him, and they knew that under his leadership they could accomplish anything. One of the challenges Alexander faced was how to rule over the vast lands he had just conquered. He could not just rule Persia the same way he had ruled Macedonia. The Persian Empire was a different place with different customs and people. Alexander understood that he needed to be a wise ruler, someone who respected the cultures and traditions of the people he had conquered. He began to adopt some of the Persian customs, wearing their clothes and learning their language. He also married Persian women, which helped to build strong alliances with the Persian nobles. Despite these efforts to integrate Persian culture with Greek culture, Alexander's decision to adopt Persian customs was met with resistance from some of his Macedonian soldiers. They were not happy with Alexander's changes, and they saw his actions as a betrayal of their Macedonian identity. This created tensions within his army, but Alexander's charisma and leadership helped to keep his soldiers loyal to him. He reminded them that they were building an empire together, and that they needed to work as one to achieve their goals. As Alexander's control over Persia grew stronger, he turned his attention to the rest of the world. He began to dream of an even larger empire, one that stretched from Greece to India. He believed that he could bring all of these lands together under one rule, and that he could create a world where people of different cultures could live together in peace. This was a bold vision, but Alexander was determined to make it a reality. In the years that followed, Alexander would continue to face new challenges and battles. He would lead his army further east into India and face new enemies. But the conquest of Persia was the first step in his journey to create the greatest empire the world had ever known. It was his victory in Persia that set the stage for everything that came after. And it was in Persia that Alexander began to show the world what kind of leader he was: brave, intelligent, and determined to achieve greatness. After the great achievements of his conquests, Alexander the Great's life came to an unexpected and sudden end. At the age of just 32, Alexander died in the city of Babylon, far from his homeland of Macedonia. His death left the entire world in shock. Alexander had accomplished so much in his short life, and many believed he had more to achieve. But in a single moment, his life was cut short, and the future of his vast empire was uncertain. The cause of his death has been debated for centuries. Some say that he died from a fever, while others believe he was poisoned. Whatever the cause, his death marked the end of an era. His empire, which stretched from Greece to Egypt and into the heart of Asia, was left without a strong leader. Alexander's generals, known as the Diadochi, fought among themselves for control of the empire, and this led to its eventual division. His dream of a united empire was lost after his death, and the lands he had conquered were split into separate kingdoms. Despite the division of his empire, Alexander's legacy lived on. He had done what no one thought possible. He had united a large part of the known world under his rule. He had defeated the mighty Persian Empire and brought Greek culture to many parts of Asia and Africa. His vision of a united world, where different cultures could live together in peace, continued to inspire people for many years after his death. One of the greatest aspects of Alexander's legacy was his ability to blend cultures. He had a strong respect for the people and traditions of the lands he conquered. He adopted some of their customs, wore their clothes, and even married women from the places he conquered. This was not always popular with his soldiers, but it showed that Alexander wanted to create a world where different cultures could come together. His cities, such as Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning and culture, where Greek ideas mixed with local traditions. These cities helped spread Greek culture and knowledge to places where it had never been before. Alexander's military tactics also left a lasting impact on the world. He was a brilliant strategist, and his ability to lead his army to victory in difficult situations became famous. Many military leaders throughout history studied his tactics and tried to learn from them. His use of the phalanx, a formation of soldiers with long spears, was a key part of his success. It allowed him to fight larger armies and win battles that seemed impossible. Alexander's ability to lead from the front, fighting alongside his men, also earned him their respect and loyalty. Even though his empire did not last, the ideas and values that Alexander promoted did. His belief in the power of knowledge, culture, and unity spread to many parts of the world. The Hellenistic Age, which began after his death, was a time when Greek culture and ideas mixed with local traditions to create something new. This period saw the rise of great centers of learning, such as the Library of Alexandria, which became famous for its collection of knowledge. Alexander's influence helped shape the world in ways that lasted long after his death. Alexander the Great's life was full of both triumphs and challenges. He dreamed of creating a world united under one rule, and although that dream did not come true in his lifetime, his efforts left a mark on history. His legacy lives on through the cities he founded, the cultures he brought together, and the military strategies he created. Even though Alexander did not live to see the full impact of his work, his vision of a better, more connected world continues to inspire people today. Alexander the Great's story is one of incredible ambition, vision, and courage. From a young age, he was destined for greatness, not only because of his royal birth, but also because of his relentless desire to make a mark on the world. Throughout his life, Alexander faced many challenges, from dealing with family tensions to leading his army into foreign lands. Yet with his brilliant mind and unwavering determination, he managed to conquer one of the largest empires in history. Alexander's military genius, his ability to inspire his troops, and his dream of uniting the world under one rule made him one of the most famous figures in history. He defeated the mighty Persian Empire, created cities that became centers of learning and culture, and spread Greek ideas and knowledge far and wide. Despite his early death, Alexander's legacy lived on, influencing future generations of leaders, soldiers, and thinkers. His vision of a world united by understanding and culture continues to inspire us today. However, Alexander's story also teaches us important lessons about leadership, ambition, and the cost of pursuing one's dreams. While Alexander's conquests were incredible, they were not without their challenges and consequences. His ambition sometimes led to conflicts with those closest to him, and his dream of a united empire was not fully realized during his lifetime. His empire was divided after his death, and many of his achievements were lost in the battles that followed. The most important lesson from Alexander's life is the power of vision and perseverance. Alexander dreamed big, and he did not let any obstacle stand in his way. He was determined to create a better world, even if it meant facing great danger and making difficult decisions. His story reminds us that it is important to have a vision, to set goals, and to work hard to achieve them, even when the path is not easy. But Alexander's life also teaches us about balance. While ambition can drive us to achieve great things, it is important to remember the value of relationships, respect for others, and understanding the limits of our power. Alexander's struggles with his father and his soldiers show us that being a strong leader means also being wise, compassionate, and aware of the people around us. It is important to listen, to learn, and to respect different perspectives as we work toward our goals. In our own lives, we can apply the lessons from Alexander's story in many ways. We can set ambitious goals and pursue them with dedication, just like Alexander did. But we should also remember that true leadership comes from understanding others and making wise decisions. We should strive to build connections, respect different cultures, and work toward unity in our own communities. Alexander's story shows that with vision, perseverance, and the willingness to learn from others, we can make a lasting impact on the world. Congratulations for finishing the story of Alexander the Great. By listening to and understanding this story, you have not only learned about an important historical figure, but also improved your English listening and comprehension skills. I hope you found this story inspiring, and that it encourages you to pursue your dreams with determination and wisdom. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue creating more exciting and educational content. Thank you for joining us on this journey.